Welcome to IRTs. This is such a critical part of the presentation and really where, in my opinion, the sale really happens. So before we dive into this, I want to start by explaining the acronym IRT and defining what each thing stands for, because this is something that we focus so much on as an agency, and I really want to make sure you guys are as strong in this area from the very beginning. So as always, take some notes as we go through this. And as we get into future videos, we're going to detail every section. So the acronym of IRT, the I stands for introduction. Very simply, before we start talking about a product or a benefit or show a video, we're just going to intro what that benefit is. The recap is exactly what it is. We're going to recap what the video said if we play the video. We're going to just recap what the recap screen shows so the client understands what the coverage is and why the computer is showing that. The T in IRT stands for tie down. This is where you're going to get the buy-in from the client, and we're going to get the agreement that everything does make sense logically and emotionally. So that leads me to my next thing, guys. When you think about sales in general, and in this case, I want to put you more in the shoes of a consumer rather than the person, the sales individual. So as a consumer, normally you're going to make purchases based on two things. Number one, you either need something, or number two, you make a purchase because you want something. Now, I know me, for example, every single week when we go to the grocery store, whether if it's me or my wife, but when I go, I always get milk, and because we need milk. I need milk for my daughter's cereal. We need milk for her bottle. But at the checkout line, I see that shelf where it has the candy, and I can't control myself. I want the caramellos 100% of the time. So even though I go to the store for milk because I need it, I end up walking out of there with milk and a caramello because I need the milk and want the caramello. Now, in our business, it's really important to understand that you can't just have either or. You can't just have a client that needs the benefit, because if they don't want it, chances are you're not going to be walking away with the sale, and they're not going to get the coverage. If they really like our benefits, but they don't feel that they need them, chances are you're not going to make that sale either. So we have to make sure, as we're going through each presentation with each client, that we check off the need and that we also check off the want in order to put ourselves in the best position possible. So when it comes to these two ways that people buy, logically and emotionally, all right, that's the need and the want. Just realize that the intro and the recap take care of that logic piece, because you can't argue with what the computer's showing and why it's showing it. The tie down takes care of that emotional piece, where it makes it personalized enough for them to realize that, you know, we do need this for myself and or for my family. Now, what the EAP is going to do, coming from the survey, I know you guys just worked on the survey, it's going to isolate 4 major areas of concern based on the questions that you asked on the survey. Number 1, final expenses, income protection, mortgage protection, and college education. Now, in a situation, and I just want to give you guys a heads up, in a situation where, let's say an individual or a family, they don't have kids, there's not going to be college education protection showing up because the client just doesn't need it. If the client rents a home and not own a home, it's not going to show up with mortgage protection. So every program is going to be customized based on the situation of the family that you're with, which is why it's so important to record the accurate data, but make sure to look at that little key at the end of the survey after you hit submit. It shows you what the computer is going to be showing. All right, the other thing that it does is that it's going to take maximum only 5% of what an individual's take-home pay is. We're going to get into this a little bit later, but that's going to be important to remember. Now, a couple of tips as you go through the rest of this chapter and the rest of this segment. Number 1 is you want to make sure you're being very clear and concise as you're going through the IRTs. You need to make sure that the message that you're sending is getting received and understood by the clients. And the second part of this is to make sure you go slow. All right, as time continues on, you're going to go through thousands of examples of IRTs. You're going to know exactly what the computer's doing, exactly why the computer's doing it, but it's going to be the client's first and maybe only time that they're ever going to go through it. So it's important that you remember the first time you see IRTs that it was a little bit confusing. That's going to be your clients 100% of the time, guys. So be clear, be concise, and make sure to go slow. Remember that everything is normal, it's positive, it's all part of the plan. We're going to take you through a few different examples of if the computer shows this, why it pulled up those numbers, and how we're going to go about it, and the different situations. And really one of the most important things that the IRTs allow us to do, as it's setting the table to make the closing as easy as possible, it just allows us to be so proactive that by the time we get into the offer page, it's going to minimize objections, it's going to minimize rebuttals, and we're going to go into the offer page when we start closing knowing that the client needs it, they want it. The only thing that we have to deal with and worry about and overcome is just affordability.